welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today on another fun episode about tea. So, if you haven't been listening to this podcast or you're just now subscribing to this podcast, it's called The Essence of Tea and is essentially named after a book I wrote about tea and how it transformed my life. So, on our podcast, we have all sorts of guests. We have people who are health professionals, people who are athletes, people who are in the tea industry or not in the tea industry, people in other businesses. And we talk a little bit about tea and we talk about our lives and how we can improve our lives with community and just a very holistic approach. So today I'm going to be covering Darjeeling Oolong. Now, some of you know what Darjeeling tea is. Some of you might even like Darjeeling tea. And this is a live episode. So if you're watching right now, please say hello in the chat and let me know what kind of tea you drink and if you drink Darjeeling. So Darjeeling is typically a black tea from India, from Darjeeling, India. So Darjeeling is a location and that's what the tea is named after. Now, how many of you know what an oolong tea is? I do. It's actually my favorite category of teas. So some people know of oolong teas as a name of tea, as that it's one flavor. And that one flavor is what they might typically get at like a Chinese restaurant. So oolong teas are actually a category of tea, and they are the largest category of tea. In fact, they have 5 subcategories. So when we had won second place at the North American Tea Championships with our Darjeeling Oolong, it was almost on the verge of being disqualified because the name of the tea sometimes is very telling of what type of tea is. But other people name their teas whatever they want to name them. Emily Rose's tea. Okay, I'm guessing there might be rose in it. It might be named after Emily. Or Dragon Pearl's black tea. You're like, well, what's dragon pearls? And okay, it must be a pearl shape, but what does dragon mean? And so there are some names that can be kind of vague and just named after what someone wants to name it. But then there are also traditional names or words in the tea industry like oolong and like Darjeeling. Now, typically in the tea world, and tea has been drank for over 4,000 years, but typically in the tea world, Darjeelings are a black tea. But really, what that name means is that it's proprietary to the location. So, Darjeeling is actually a state in India where that tea is grown, and India produces the most black tea. So, that's why typically most people traditionally will think that a Darjeeling is a black tea. And then when its name is a little confusing because it's called Darjeeling Oolong, you might think, wait a second, is this a black tea? Is this an oolong tea? Like, what category of tea is this? But some people don't know that there are some really nice boutique teas out there that are manufactured by some farmers and making into these specialty batches of tea. So I'm having this Darjeeling oolong tea. It's an autumn pick and it has more of this golden color, not super amber, but more of almost a bright golden color. And it's picked in the fall time. And in fact, the leaves are amazing. They're very silvery, unlike a black tea. They're very silvery still. And typically for a black tea, that silveriness will turn into a golden threads or leaves or little pieces in there. So going back, typically a Darjeeling is named after a location and traditionally is a black tea. But a oolong tea is a category of teas, and this tea that I'm drinking here is a Darjeeling Oolong, and it's an award-winning tea. It tastes amazing. Typically, a Darjeeling has this nice muscatel grape vineyard flavor to it. But this Darjeeling Oolong, because it isn't quite oxidized all the way to be a black tea, this Darjeeling Oolong will have more of like a nectarine, a peachy type of pitted fruit. Not quite cherry, but like something that kind of reminds you of peaches or peach fuzz or that nectarine type of fruit. But not very green. So it's not very vegetal. But you can see this is another steeping. This is a darker steeping of this Darjeeling Oolong. So the longer you steep something, also the more concentrated the flavor and the concentration of the color. This tea will still be steeped like a traditional oolong, about 195 degrees Fahrenheit. But this is a very nice, unique oolong tea that is in the amber category of oolongs, which have 5 subcategories, and amber is the middle subcategory. And I just wanted to introduce you to why some teas are named the way that they are. Now, you can go into so many things like tippy, golden, um, things like that will give you a hint of what part of the plant is picked. And so traditionally, the names of tea plants were very telling of where the tea was from, or what stock of the plant was, or what kind of tea it was, if it was a green tea or a white tea or a black tea. But nowadays it could be so creative. So for a Darjeeling Oolong, it's very possible because they make all sorts of categories of teas in Darjeeling. So Darjeeling just means it's from that state in India. And then the oolong is just letting you know it's an oolong that's made in India. So if you haven't tried our Darjeeling Oolong at Sipping Streams, give it a try. Come down in our tea house if you're here in Fairbanks, Alaska, or you can also shop from us online at sippingstreams.com. But with all these episodes about tea, we just started a new texting community, and you can reach me directly on this phone number. So if you want to learn more about tea and our tea workshop that is coming up, a brand new tea workshop that's coming up in February, text this number below. Text this number below. It's 206 339 4587. Like, you can just say, "Hey, Jenny, how's it going?" Because it's literally text directly to my number. And so if you're wanting to know when that tea class is coming up, how to register for it, which we don't have the registration page up yet, definitely text me and I'll know right away and I can get back to you. If you have questions about tea, you want to learn more about tea, you want a special episode about tea, text this phone number. This is the best way to get a hold of me directly and to learn more about tea or any sorts of questions that you have or advice that you want about tea. So if you like this episode from the Sipping Streams Essence of Tea podcast, go and hit like and subscribe and write a rating and review on Apple Podcast if you get a chance. But if you like the Essence of Tea podcast, definitely leave us a rating and review, and make sure you share it out with someone who might be interested in learning more about tea. And until next time, happy sipping.